Hello and welcome to the DCL podcast. I'm your host, Steve Creasy, inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, hello and welcome to episode 6 of the DCL podcast, your podcast for Disney Cruise Line history, trip reports, and general travel planning. Well, before we jump into today's show, I want to give a quick shout out to Kim Slusher over at the Distracted Life podcast. Kim just recently hit 100 shows, and for those of you who listened to my initial podcast, she's the one that really got me interested and excited about trying to do this. And if you haven't listened to her show, I'd definitely encourage you to go over. She and Angie Numa, and also Christy Puttick, who's been on this show as well, do an awesome job over there talking about all aspects of Walt Disney World, Disney Cruise Line, and just kind of general topics around the Walt Disney Company as well. So something I shared with Kim that I looked up and I want to throw out there too with you. It's a little bit dated, but I think it's pretty relevant still. Little numbers, which I'm always kind of interested in. Between June 2005 and June 2015, the typical podcast ran for 6 months. It had 12 episodes at a rate of about 2 episodes per month before it went inactive. So reaching 100 shows is quite a milestone for Kim. And once again, I just want to encourage you to go over there and listen to her show if you haven't done so. And even more importantly, just to give her a big congratulations for making it that far, and looking forward to many shows in the future with her as well. So with that being said, we're going to jump into today's topic. Actually, before I jump into today's topic, I did want to throw out there that I'm not sure I'm actually recording today when the Disney Parks blog and Disney Cruise Line did a live streaming of the new Frozen show, which is on the Wonder. I've tried to look up to see if that's going to be archived, if you're going to be able to go back and watch it or not, but I haven't been able to find that. But you might try and take a look at either the Disney Parks blog or else Disney Parks/Disney Cruise Line on YouTube. And hopefully they'll archive that show, because I didn't actually get a chance to watch it myself, but definitely kind of interested in seeing it. So if they do archive it, hopefully you'll have a chance to, or we'll all have a chance to go back and watch it if you missed it. With that, let's move on to today's show. You know, one of the things that I really wanted to try and do with this podcast, besides talking about just Disney Cruise Line history and travel in general, was to talk about the way travel is changing in the industry. And I think that tonight is kind of an exciting opportunity that I picked up on when I was talking recently with a good friend of mine, Matt Winnett, about him and his wife's recent trip this last fall in Italy, and the way travel is kind of changing for the better for all of us, which is offering more opportunities. Matt and his wife they were not on a cruise, but they were in Italy for 2 weeks this past fall. And in part of the planning that he did, he went and used Rick Steves' website. And if you're not familiar with Rick Steves, he's kind of an icon in the travel industry. He provides, if you go to ricksteves.com, you can kind of read his backstory. But he is somebody that is very trusted. My wife and I have used him. Many of our friends have used him and his recommendations, his books, his services. And what he's done is kind of built a strong reputation on finding, value in travel through Europe through hotels, restaurants, and kind of itineraries in some of the more iconic cities. And something that he's experimenting on is to now offer, not only can you sign up for week-long, 2-week-long, month-long, I believe, trips through Europe, which are guided by some of his guides, but he's teaming up experimentally right now with a company in Italy to provide day trips that you can sign up for kind of last minute. So they're almost kind of like mini shore excursions, you might say, as you travel throughout Italy. And Matt and his wife had just a phenomenal time on the 2 that they ended up going and taking with them. And it made me start thinking that, wow, this is a cool opportunity for somebody who, right now, like I said, it's experimental, but if it expands a little bit further throughout Europe and maybe even into America, what a great opportunity to add on to your trip, either beforehand, if you're leaving out of, say, Barcelona on one of the Mediterranean cruises, or Dover out of England on one of the cruises from there. If there are these, 2, 4, 6 hour excursions that you can do through somebody as iconic and credible as Rick Steves, to add on to your kind of vacation experience. So tonight we're going to hear from Matt and all about his experiences traveling with them. Before we jump into it, though, one of the things that I kind of thought of after looking and listening to the show before I put it together was, these are great opportunities. But some things to think about. They might right now be geared a little bit more towards adults and older kids, especially, the day-long tours. They're not really focused necessarily, on the little kids, being kid-friendly. So you might have to be a little bit more, thoughtful of how well your kids may travel if you're traveling with kids and try and do one of these tours, at least initially. The other thing is the whole confirmation process is done via the internet. So and Matt will explain kind of how the process works. So you'll definitely have to have internet access. You'll have to have some kind of data plan if you're over in Europe, either while you're on the ship or off of the ship. And then the last thing was you have to pay in euros. So you need to have cash available when you sign up for these tours. But it's backed by, one of the most highly reputable, travel icons in the Europe travel market, Rick Steves. And like I said, my wife and I've used his books and guidebooks to stay in many hotels and restaurants in a lot of the cities around Europe, and we find him pretty much spot on. We've never had, a negative experience with any of the things that he's recommended. The other thing that's kind of cool about it is it's kind of flexible. You're looking at going in and leaving out of Barcelona. You're not sure what you want to do. So maybe you don't plan anything. Maybe your plan is to just do maybe one of those hop-on, hop-off buses for the day. But, the night before, you're on the airplane flying into Barcelona, you're playing around on the internet, and you look at this cool opportunity, which is this 2-hour tour of maybe a couple of the churches or something in the Barcelona area. Now, they're not available today, but if this kind of expands in the future. So that's kind of neat, the flexibility around it. And then the last thing I'll say is, and for those of you familiar with Rick Steves, and this is kind of starting to sound like a commercial for him, but and Matt kind of addresses it too. The people that use his guidebooks tend to be very like-minded in their travel, people that are very excited about getting out and learning the culture and the history of the place that they're at, and are very respectful of being in another person's culture. So kind of like-minded travelers, and that goes a long way when you're going with a different group or an unknown group. So that's why I wanted to bring this show to you tonight. So I really hope you enjoyed it. I had a good time talking to Matt about his and Hannah's experience, and I hope you enjoyed as well. So without more talk, on with the show. So now I'd like to introduce to the show a good friend of mine, Matt Winnett. How are you doing today, Matt?
I'm doing well. How are you, Steve?
Not too bad. Thanks for coming on. I do appreciate it. I want to just throw out there that Matt and I are coworkers, and this whole show stems around a conversation that we had a couple months ago when we were working together, and he told me about his trip to Italy, and I think it was just Italy that you guys went to, right?
That's correct. Yeah, my wife and I went over there for about 2.5 weeks in the beginning of October last year.
Okay, so you guys went to Italy in October, and you told me about kind of a special trip that you guys did when you were in Naples, and ended up doing some trips through kind of a Rick Steves subsidiary. And if you don't know who Rick Steves is, for those people who don't know Rick Steves, you can go to ricksteves.com, and he is kind of a travel guru who really started, kind of budget travel to begin with, backpacking through Europe, and has got a huge following, and has kind of put together a pretty good product through books and hotels that he recommends. And this is the first time I've heard of what you got to do, which was kind of a day tour. Is that correct, Matt?
It was, yeah. We were actually in Sorrento, and like you said, we've used those Rick Steves books for all of our travels in Europe, and this is the first time we saw this opportunity. But kind of what he's doing is partnering with a tour company that's based out of Naples to provide low-cost tours to his readers. And basically, they only operate if they get a certain number of people signing up for the tour. And it seemed like a great opportunity, so we gave it a try when we were staying in Sorrento.
Okay, and how did you hear about it initially? Was it through a website, or through
There was actually a small excerpt in his book, and it was in the Naples section. All the tours with this company are based the tour guides are based out of Naples there. The company's based out of Naples, but they come down to Sorrento and they do tours to Capri and Pompeii, and then they do the Amalfi Coast. So the book led us to the website for the tour company, and that's where we were able to get more information on the tours and complete the sign-up process.
Okay, and that website is called sharedtours.com. That's SHARED tours.com if you want to take a look at it. And initially, I think you said this was, or at least from reading the book, that this is kind of an experiment he's having and starting in Italy, and maybe if it works well, he's thinking about expanding it on to other countries. Is that correct from what he said?
It is, yeah. And there's a little excerpt on the website from Rick Steves, kind of talks about his ideas and how he came up with this plan. But what he would like to do is bring fellow budget travelers together for good quality tours that kind of break the mold of traditional tours where you're on a big bus and it feels very impersonal. These tours are all 6 to 8, 10 people, depending on which tour you're taking. So it's really a low budget personal tour of the area, and it works a lot better than the larger tours that we've done in other parts of Europe.
Yeah, that makes it a lot nicer. I know myself, it's always nicer if you can be on a smaller tour. You get a lot more out of it, I think, than when you're with those great big huge tour groups. So once you found out about it and you found the website, when did you sign up for this, or how did you sign up for it? You signed up through the website?
Yeah, it was actually interesting. We were working our way through Italy. This was our fourth stop in Sorrento, and we kind of planned our first few cities, but we didn't really have a great plan towards the end of our trip. And when we got to Sorrento, we started looking for what activities we were going to do. We kind of had some ideas. We wanted to see the Amalfi Coast, and we definitely wanted to make it up to Pompeii, but we didn't have a great plan for how we were going to pull that off. And actually, the night that we got there to Sorrento, we started looking for tours and maybe bus or train transportation, how we were going to get to the places that we wanted to go. And we ran across this in the Rick Steves guide, and we went to the website. And the first tour that we wanted to do was a tour of the Amalfi Coast, and it actually left the next morning. And we were able to sign up with that short of notice on the website. And kind of how the tours work, at least for the Amalfi Coast tour that we did, you need a minimum of 6 people for the tour to actually go. So that's kind of the interesting thing about this. If you don't get the 6 people, the tour is not going to operate. So when we found the Amalfi Coast tour, there were currently 4 people signed up. We made the last 2 for 6, and we signed up on the website. And, at that point, we were a little unsure what was going to happen, how we were going to get contacted, by the company. But sure enough, within 30 minutes, we had a confirmation email from the tour operator giving us directions for the morning, where we were going to meet the tour guide and how the tour was going to start. And from the website to meeting the tour guide, everything worked absolutely perfectly.
That's pretty amazing. So it's pretty flexible as far as once you get over there, looking at your different options. So if you change your mind or if there's something else going on and pops up, it's kind of a flexible way to see some different things as well. So where exactly is Sorrento again? I guess I should have looked. That's on the Mediterranean side of Italy, right?
Yes, south of Naples.
Okay.
So it's about a 45-minute train ride south of Naples.
Okay. And, I'm just looking at it here now, and so the Amalfi Coast tour is €50 per person.
That's correct.
Yeah, just to give people kind of an idea of how much it would cost, and that's $53.63 right now if you do the exchange rate. So that's a pretty reasonable tour for all day, especially when you've got your own dedicated tour guide for 6 people. $100 for 2 people. That's a pretty good deal. In my book.
Yeah, it really is. It's it's a small van. We had the 6 people. They were great travelers that we were with. I think being the Rick Steves mindset, people that, kind of follow his books, all kind of think the same way and have the same ideas about their travel. And we really hit it off with the other 4 people that were traveling with us on that day. And like you said, 9 hours for €50 per person is a pretty good deal. And I don't know if any of your listeners have been down on the Amalfi Coast or driven that road, but there's no way I would want to rent a car and try to make it down that road. It's definitely a challenging drive. So having somebody that knew the area and was skilled in driving that road was definitely a plus.
Well, let's talk about that Amalfi Coast tour. So that was the first one you did, and so you met up with the other four travelers the next day. And
Yep.
what all did you guys do then?
Well, we met in downtown Sorrento. They had a meeting point, and it was real clear when we got there. There was a tour guide already there. He had the van. He had a sign from the Mondo Tour Company, so you knew exactly who you were looking for. And one thing to mention, the 50 euros, all these tours, you have to pay in cash. So that's something to think about when you meet the tour guide. So while they take a credit card on the website when you sign up to hold your reservation, you do actually have to pay in cash when you meet the tour guide. But yep, all the people were there on time. We got into the van and started the drive. And I guess I would kind of call the Amalfi Coast tour, there was kind of a light narration from the driver pointing out different sites along the way. He was really good about stopping at great points on the road for photo opportunities, street vendors, those sorts of things as we worked our way down towards Positano, which was the first stop that we came to on the Coast Drive. And in each city, you get about an hour and a half to kind of tour. You're on your own when you get to the city. So he has some ideas about places you can go, restaurants, sites, things that you can see. But once they drop you off, you're on your own for about an hour and a half, 2 hours at the most. And then you have a meeting point to meet back up with the driver and work your way down the road further. So the three cities we visited were Positano, Amalfi, and Ravello. All three cities were great, and like I said earlier, these aren't places that you could easily rent a car and drive to, being unfamiliar with the location, because it's definitely a treacherous and tough road to navigate.
Having driven in Italy here just about 2 years ago, we drove from Austria down to Venice, and we were on the main roads, and they were pretty crazy. So I could imagine like the coast roads how tight it would be in some of the places. So cool. So they kind of give you an overview as you get into each one of those towns, kind of give you like places you might want to go and see, restaurants and whatnot. Which one did you guys enjoy the most? I'm sure they're probably different. Each one of them were different in their different ways.
Yeah, they were. I would say that my wife and I liked Positano the best. That was the first stop, and I'm fairly certain that in Positano there were some limitations on vehicle size for getting to the town. We were kind of benefited by being in a small van for that stop because we could actually get into the town. I believe if you do an Amalfi Coast tour on a larger bus, there might be some restrictions in stopping there. That kind of made the town a little quieter, and my wife and I just liked the feel of the town. You could walk down to a great beach area. It was actually a place where we thought, this would be a great place to spend, a day or a couple nights there. We really enjoyed our time there. So from all three of the locations, that first one was definitely probably the one that we liked the most. The second one, Amalfi, was one that all the tours could get to. So you had larger buses. You also had pretty heavy cruise ship saturation in Amalfi. It just had a different feel, a larger city feel. There was definitely a lot more hustle and bustle, a lot more noise. It didn't feel quite as quaint as Positano did. And the last one was Ravello, which was a smaller town. It was a great place. There wasn't as much to do there. And truthfully, the day is quite long. That was the last one we stopped at. So we were probably at hour, 8 by the time we got there.
Kind of running out of steam a little bit.
We were tired. We sat down at a restaurant with the other couples that were there and had some drinks and just kind of relaxed. But we weren't feeling too adventurous by the time we got to Ravello. But it's a great town. It seemed like it was a neat place, but we were a little tired by the time we got to that point. So.
That's kind of the neat thing just in travel is sometimes it's kind of nice just to sit back, kick, and let me start that all over again. Sit back, kind of relax a little bit and just kind of take it all in rather than just running from point to point. So it's kind of a neat way to finish out the day as you guys went through all three of those different towns.
It was.
And also being able to see, 3 different places, it kind of gives you kind of an overview, which that's one of the things I've enjoyed about cruising. Like when we went through the Med, we had 4 different stops, and after looking at it, there was definitely Dubrovnik, which we stopped in Croatia, was a place my wife and I would love to go back to someday. So it kind of gives you kind of an idea of what you would want to come back to and doing something like this too. That's awesome. So that was your first day in Sorrento. You guys went into the Amalfi Coast, and then was it the second day that you guys did Pompeii, or was that further on?
Yeah, it was actually the third day. I think that we were there. We did the Pompeii tour. We had talked about going to the island of Capri in between those two, but unfortunately the seas were quite rough and they weren't operating the boat tours out there. So we ended up spending one day just kind of touring Sorrento, which is a great place. There's a lot to offer there. A lot of neat history and great town tour there that you can kind of just walk through in the Rick Steves book. But the third day we did Pompeii, which was personally one of my goals for this trip. I really wanted to see Pompeii, and we were kind of torn as far as how we were going to do it. You know, we had talked to people who said you can just get your own guidebook and go up there and walk around the city on your own. Some people said it's too big for that and you really need a tour. And originally we had looked at tours, and, you know, truthfully, if you find a one-on-one, you know, 2-on-1 tour with a private guide in Pompeii, you know, you could easily spend over 300 euros for that tour. So this Rick Steves option offers a 2-hour tour of Pompeii with one of their guides, and it costs 15 euros per person. For the tour. Yeah. And then you also, on top of that, have to pay the entrance fee into Pompeii, which is 11 euros. So for 26 euros, you're getting in and you're getting 2 hours of narration around the city. And I'm really glad we did that, because once you finish the 2-hour tour, you got your admission for the full day into Pompeii. You can stay there as long as you want, but it's great to get the lay of the land and a little explanation of why the city is the way it is and the eruption and the people that were there. So this tour had a minimum of 6 people and a max of 16, so it could get a little bigger. We had probably about 10, I would say, 10 or 11 in ours, and that was still a great size. I mean, the tour guide, you could hear him, you know, there's no microphones, earpieces, any of that. You know, he would answer our questions. You know, he stayed close to us the whole time, and he had a lot of great local knowledge about the area. I think that the tour guides that tour in Pompeii are all certified to give those tours, so the people that are giving the tours really know the history of the city, and he was a great resource to start our day there in Pompeii.
So kind of just to go back, you were in Naples at the time, I believe, or were you in Sorrento when you started?
We were in Sorrento. Yeah, we didn't spend any time in Naples other than just passing through on the train. So
you're in Sorrento.
Yeah, we started that tour out of Sorrento.
Okay, yep. And so it's up to you, just for the listeners, to get yourself to Pompeii. But once you get to Pompeii, that's where you meet your guide, and then you get the 2-hour tour like you just talked about. Yep,
absolutely. Yeah, there's the larger trains go to Naples, and then to get from Naples to Sorrento, there's a smaller, they call it their local train, and that line runs from Naples down to Sorrento, and Pompeii is about halfway between the two. Okay. So we just got on that local train, takes you to the train station there, and there's a real easy meeting point to find once you get to Pompeii outside the gates. And then just like the Amalfi Coast tour, there'll be a tour guide there with a sign for Mondo Tours. And you meet them, you pay them, and you start the tour.
And do you remember, was there like different times during the day that you could do it, or was it just kind of one time during the day to meet up with the guide? Or
I believe there were multiple times. We did an early one. It was around 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning. I believe there was an afternoon option as well. They ran them a couple times throughout the day from what I remember.
Okay. Yeah, we're looking at going to the Mediterranean in 2018, and one of the stops is in Naples, and well, there are some great... he actually has a Naples tour, believe it or not, too, a Naples walk, which 3 hours walking with a tour guide with my kids probably isn't going to work, but...
Yeah.
But this is like, has the potential to be a pretty good option to go to Pompeii for the day, too, where rather than going through the cruise line, it gives you an option to maybe do it a little bit cheaper you've got to figure out how to get from Naples to Pompeii. But once you're there, it's definitely a very reasonable price point exactly to wander around Pompeii. And what was your favorite part about walking through Pompeii, just out of curiosity?
It's an amazing city, as far as the preservation of what's been excavated. There's still probably half of the city, from what I understood, that hasn't been dug up from the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. But what has been dug up is just so well preserved for something that's 2,000 years old. To be able to walk into these houses and see the paintings on the walls and the architecture, it looks new, and it's really a neat thing to be able to see. And personally, for me, I had taken a Latin class when I was in junior high, and the subject of the book was around a family in Pompeii, and Hannah and I were actually able to find the house of the family that I studied when I was in junior high. So that was a really neat thing for me, and that was one of my goals for this trip. So we were able to pull that off, and I would say that was definitely the highlight. But the city is just so well preserved. You'll never find anything like it around the world, I think, just because of, how the eruption preserved the city.
That's pretty amazing, being able to kind of touch history like that, to read about a family like that and then actually go see where they lived before.
Yeah, it was
the disaster and whatnot, but that is pretty cool.
It was really neat.
And I also really like the idea, like you were talking about, of having a 2-hour tour rather than, sometimes you get into 4 or 6 all day, through some of it really depends upon kind of your interest and the level of interest of either the artwork or the history or whatnot. But for me, in the way I know my wife and I kind of work in our family, 2 hours is like the perfect amount of time to get an overview, like you said, a lay of the land, give you a lot of information, and then kind of give you that freedom afterwards to kind of wander around.
Yep, absolutely.
So once the tour was over, were the guides still around by any chance where you could ask them questions, or did they
Unfortunately not. Our guide left. I believe that he probably had other tours that day. There's plenty of tours going on, and so there's lots of people walking around, with their tour groups. And unfortunately, there really isn't anybody to ask any information after you leave your tour guide. It was kind of unfortunate because we did have a few questions, we would have liked to have asked after we were kind of wandering around. But once you leave your tour guide, you're kind of on your own. You do have a good map of the city that has a lot of good information on it, but you are kind of on your own after the tour guide leaves you.
Well, cool. And then, so how many, after you got done with the 2-hour tour, how much longer do you guys think you hung around Pompeii before you headed back?
I would say we probably wandered around for another 2 to 3 hours, and in that time we also had lunch at a restaurant there that they have in the city. But we probably spent another 2.5 hours just wandering around, walking. There's so much to see, and you think of Pompeii, or at least I thought of Pompeii, as a very small village almost. Uh-huh. And when you get there and you see the map, it's a huge city. And like I said, I think only about half of it is actually excavated. But, I mean, you can wander down streets. And it's not the easiest walk. It's all kind of uneven cobblestone type roads and everything. So you're not walking fast by any means. So it takes some time to cover ground. But it's a quite large city. And you have free range to roam as far as you want. So you can really take in a lot. Some people that I talked to, spent the whole day there and stayed until they closed. But, we were probably totally there for somewhere about, 4 to 5 hours total.
And you felt like you got a good sense of Pompeii in that time?
We did. You could have spent more time there. Again, this was one of the last stops on our trip, and we had been at it for about 2.5 weeks. So we were starting to wind down a little bit, just like the Amalfi tour. So, we were ready to head back and kick back for a while, but I think we got a good overview and we saw quite a bit. So,
Well, cool. So, would you do this again if you had the opportunity, or would you?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
These tours are great. You know, we really my wife wanted to go to Capri. If we were in Sorrento, we would definitely go out there again. You know, the Naples walk wasn't something we got to do. But I think the biggest benefit to these tours is just the fact that it's a small group where you really feel like you can talk to the tour guide and you're not just a number on a big bus. And for the price, there's absolutely no way you can beat that.
Oh yeah, I mean, from recent travels, you know, looking at what they charge, I mean, these are amazing prices to get quite. I mean, getting guides that have extensive knowledge of the areas, that's pretty amazing. I'm looking at this Capri by private boat, and it's 80 euros per person, and that includes your ride over to Capri on a small boat with about 6 other people, and lunch and snacks and everything else, and it looks like an amazing time. So it sounds like you guys need to go back.
Yeah, I think we do. So.
Well, what's in store for you guys next? Where are you guys headed next?
Well, we've got we don't have anything definitively planned yet, but we do have some vacation time this year, and our first plan is Iceland. So we haven't been there yet, so I think we're gonna give that a try. So, have you ever been there?
No. Well, I've landed at Reykjavik like three times when I was in the Air Force, but
yeah.
Other than stopping there for about 2 hours to get gas, no, I haven't really seen anything.
Okay.
But it's definitely on the on our bucket list. When are you guys going to Iceland? Then, what time of the year?
I think that'll be our vacation time for that's in April, I believe.
So this coming April?
Yep, yeah. Wow. So it's coming up, yeah. So we gotta start planning that here pretty soon. So.
Does Rick have stuff about Iceland? I've never even looked at Iceland.
I don't believe so, but I could be wrong. So yeah, definitely something to look into. We've used these Rick Steves books for all our travels in Europe, and yeah, you can't beat the information that he has. You can really fill a whole vacation just with one little book, so it's pretty good.
Yeah, we've used him quite a bit too when we've gone to Europe, and I mean, he's spot on with pretty much everything that we've ever done through his books, from either tours or hotels or even restaurants that we've used. So yeah, we really definitely enjoy using this stuff, especially when you're going to someplace you've never been before.
Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for coming on today, Matt. I really appreciate it.
And, not a problem. It was good to talk to you, Steve.
Yeah, and when you get back from Iceland, I would love to pick your brain about Iceland, and if you're willing to come on again.
Yeah, absolutely. We will let you know how it goes. So.
Awesome. Well, we will bring you back then, if not sooner, and I appreciate you coming on, and thanks for coming on today, Matt.
Not a problem, Steve. Have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Well, there you go. Wow, that was quite a fun time talking to Matt about his and Hannah's travels to Italy, and I hope that you're as excited as I am about the way travel is changing and some of the new opportunities that are being presented for all of us out there. You know, as you look forward, for those of you maybe planning trips to Europe this summer on DCL, or just to Europe in general, there's a lot of opportunities out there to see things and to experience things. And if Rick can get these kind of travels going throughout Europe, boy, sounded like Matt and Hannah had a great time, and for the price point, you just can't beat it. So that's going to wrap up our show this week. I really do appreciate you, the listener, as always, coming back and listening. And our next show coming up, I keep talking about it, and I'm going to get it out there. I had a great conversation with an owner on Airbnbs, and I just think that is a great opportunity as a different sort of way to stay prior to or after a cruise, especially in the Miami, Vancouver, San Diego areas. You know, if you're leaving out of Port Canaveral, a lot of people are spending time up at Walt Disney World, so that may or may not be as good an opportunity. But just to throw it out there real quick without going too much of on a side note, you know, Airbnbs, actually, they are kind of doing the same thing that Rick Steves is doing. You can now go on their app or their website, and local people can not only offer rooms or houses for stay, you can also book tours through individuals who are doing all different kinds of things. Matter of fact, just as a side note, on one of my layovers recently, one of our flight attendants, we had about a 24-hour layover, and during the middle of her layover, she was down in Mexico. She saw that there was somebody local that was offering Mexican cooking classes. So she spent 3 hours of her day on her layover learning how to cook enchiladas. So there's a lot of opportunities out there as the travel industry continues to change, and I hope you're as excited about it as I am, as far as being able to get out there and plan what's next on your bucket list or your next adventure. So with that being said, as always, you can reach out to me if you'd like to on Facebook at DCL Podcast. That's probably the best way to do it. I'm also on Twitter at DCL Podcast as well if you want to reach out that way. And I look forward to bringing you the next episode just as soon as I can. Hopefully we're going to have it out here in the next 2 weeks. And once again, I do appreciate you, the listener, coming back and listening. And I want to wish you and your families safe travels wherever they may be taking you, and fair winds as you go on your next adventure. Thanks for listening, everybody.